Hey, Hickok 45. You're not going to believe this, but I have changed my carry gun yet again. Now I'm packing a P38. Nice. Boy. Well, yeah, I'll teach you. Oh yes, P38, look at that baby. Historical, steeped in history. The P38, invented by Carl Walther. And of course this one is a Mauser. But Mauser made a bunch of them too, over 300,000 of them. And this one is a bring back. Pretty cool, huh? We appreciate Tennessee Gun Country lending this to us. Fellow up there's great uncle actually brought this back. He was in the 103rd Infantry, the Ozark Division, and brought this back, World War II. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Made by Mauser, as I say. And it doesn't have Mauser on it. I learned that they quit putting Walther or Mauser on these guns. They started using a code, numbers and things, and actually the WWII, if you can see it on the slide there, indicates it was made by Mauser, and some other markings too. But that tells you who made it. They were concerned that the Allies would bomb the factories. I guess they too much information, so it's pretty interesting. I read that. I'm assuming it's true. You know, everything you read is true, and everything you see on YouTube is true, right? Not exactly, but anyway, this is the big picture. Let's look at the big picture first. Again, I'm not an expert, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn. This is the pistol that more or less, you know, replaced this one, the P08, the Luger. All right, now it was a gradual thing, and this was designed and patented, I guess, in 38 of all time, you know, 1938, P38. But it wasn't in production until about 1940. But it was intended to replace the P08, the Luger, and it did begin to replace it. I think they were planning on ceasing production of the Luger, the P08, in about 42. You know, this was the new, this was the replacement, this was the plan. Although in World War II, there were lots, thousands and thousands, of course, of the P08, the Luger, used, and then lots of these, thousands and thousands of these as well. So it was that transitional period, that overlap time there. See lots of these you see in the movies, and if you were there, it wasn't a movie, and you saw both perhaps, and of course both of these were brought back. Pretty interesting. So that's kind of where it fits, and it was a better design. It was the reason it was replacing it. Why was it replacing it? You know, you don't replace a firearm unless you think you have something better, right? And let's load this back. Just have one magazine, but this one is simpler in design, and as you know, the P08 is really cool, that toggle lock system and everything, but it's more expensive to make, probably not as durable in the long run, a little more complicated, so they needed something, and I think not as shootable really as this firearm. So this one is cool. It in fact, you're going to see some similarities. If you know anything about some of the modern firearms, this one is extremely influential. You'll see some things that look very familiar, particularly if you have a Beretta, which, like I do, and that's why I have the Model 92 out here. Very, very, very similar in several ways. In fact, watch me take it down here. Let's say I want to decock it. Let's get the Beretta over here, the big old Beretta boy, the 92. Let's say it's clear. Let's just do a couple things here. And for example, I want to decock it. Here's the safety, right? It decocks it. Let's decock the P38. It's clear, it doesn't matter if it's not really, but let's decock it. Huh, look familiar. Decocker safety. Pretty interesting. Let's lock the slide back. Take the safety off. Lock the slide back, the slide lock there. Let's do the same with this one. Yep, lock the slide back. And let's see if we can take it down. Take down lever, right there. Oh, look at here. On the P38, take down lever, right there. Now, we'll push, release the slide lock. You got to pull the hammer on the P38. Okay, on this one, release it, slide lock. slide comes off. Okay, interesting. Now, let's take the spring out. Now, the spring is definitely different though. And look at the barrel. You've got the falling locking block system on the Beretta. You can get that out. There we go. And you know, that it's kind of interesting the way that does work. Comes back, it unlocks the barrel locks up, stays, the slide moves on rearward. Looking at the barrel from the P38, let's slide it out of there, push on that, there we go. Slide. Now look at the similarities. Same thing, locking block, falling locking block. Little button, push that, releases it, locks it. It's an interesting design. Look at it from the side. It's essentially the same except just a little bit wider, a little beefier on the P38 and streamlined a little bit on the Beretta. So that really it worked. The P38 was a reputable firearm. It had a reputation, I think, for being strong and for working, and a lot of it was used, you know, in later years with the Beretta 92 and other firearms. Your decocker, you see that in modern firearms, and I believe it used the lock breech, whereas the previous firearm, you know, German, the PPKs, just blowback. But with this locking mechanism, I think this was the first pistol that actually was had a lock breech and a double to single action like this does, just like the Beretta. So anyway, interesting how that's basically the same system right there, 1938 and then much later with the Beretta. So wanted to show you that. You can see how it locks up in the slide. You got the same, the grooves there. Sometimes wonder maybe they weren't looking at John Browning's 92 Winchester, you know, thinking how you could lock it up on either side there and have a strong, you know, lockup. So pretty cool. Let's put the Beretta back over there, get the right barrel and all that, get all the right parts for the right guns. And so this is, if you recall the P08 breakdown, this is much simpler and the way it operates. Put this back into the slide. The spring goes with the Beretta. I forget now. You notice on the P8, the P38, you do have a different spring. That reminds me of the Desert Eagle. This too looks like just about like the springs on that thing. Okay, not that this is anything like a Desert Eagle. Just slide back on there. We can get it on. Let's the ejector down, block up. Okay, get back, lock her back, and there you go. Pretty cool. Now, one thing you might notice too is that the extractor is on the left side of the P38 and the ejector is over on the right. And if you notice when I fire it, the brass comes to the left. That's rather unique. Got the same open top, kind of like the Beretta. So this is a more modern design. You know, again, it's sort of ahead of its time, I guess you'd say. If anything can be ahead of its time. If it's designed and invented, it's really not ahead of its time, but pretty cool. And it may not be as, you know, sexy as the design of the Luger, the P08. I'll get it right in a minute. It's probably more functional if I were going to war tomorrow, so I'm glad I'm not. I'd rather take the P38. I would trust it more to work under adverse conditions. I just would. Okay, so pretty cool. As I say, it was designed in P38. Generally speaking, a model number. If you're not sure, a good assumption is it might be the year the thing was patented. You know, that's often what the number indicates, of course, or adopted, just like the P08, okay, P38. And in 1940, it was manufactured, went into production, and was produced until essentially 1963. But there was a little break in there we'll talk about. Let's take a couple more shots. All right. Let's, it's not hot. It is now. Decock it. Take the safety off. Double action. Okay. Then it goes to single action, just like the Beretta. You notice you got a loaded chamber indicator. See a little pin sticking out right there. Okay. So hammer is cocked so it's in single action mode. So I think it wants to shoot a 2-liter. I'm not sure where to hold the sights, but we'll try it right on. There we go. And we got a little hang up. Bring her back. Pull out the magazine. You notice you've got the European style mag release on the bottom. Okay. And we'll try that again. I like the trigger. It has a nice single action trigger. There we go. Let's see if it'll hit the gong, or if I can hit the gong. Yeah. All right. So you got the mag release down there, which it's not my favorite spot for it, but you know, you see a lot of that in the earlier firearms and the European firearms especially. So get the mag out. We just have one of those. So pretty cool. Oh, the owner was telling me he has the mag when his great uncle picked this up. I believe I don't know if he was joking or not, you know, from someone who had no longer need of it, you know, but it had a loaded magazine in it, and he keeps that magazine, he keeps it loaded with that ammunition that was in it, which is interesting. And he said even if he uses that magazine, he unloads it and he loads it back. And so, you know, it's a historical piece. It has family significance, just like the P38 does there I told you about. So that's pretty neat to have that kind of history with a firearm and know that much about the history of it. You know, it wasn't you know, an import. There's no import markings on it. It was brought back, and it seems to be all correct. You know, all the parts. I don't think anything's been replaced. It has the Bakelite grips on it and all that. As I was saying earlier, there was an interruption. You thought I wasn't going to get back to that, didn't you? You know how I ramble if you've listened to the radio shows. But they were manufactured from around 1940 up until I think 63. But there was a break there after the war. Then Walther was and all these companies were forbidden to make these, at least for Germany. I don't know if they made any that were exported or anything like that, but they couldn't make them. And then until like 1957, then they started production again for West Germany, I think it was. So there was a period there between 45 and 1957 where they didn't make them. So then they started up production again at the Walther factory and made them until I think around 63. Now after that they changed them a little bit. They had an aluminum frame, and I think they call it the P1, and they were used by the police and different people. I'm not sure all the history of, you know, later on. This is an early metal one, you know, made in the 40s, early 40s. So pretty cool, pretty cool. Now 9mm. There were some other calibers it was offered in, but primarily it's a 9mm. You can see as you think about these two firearms, how simpler in design it is, how more like a modern pistol it is today. You know, the Beretta 92, you don't get much more popular than that firearm. It reminds you of a SIG, the Beretta, and you can see it works. It's easy to break down. It's got that double action to single action mode. Doesn't have an ambi, you know, safety and all that, but safety. But it's more of a modern firearm, really, the feel of it and the way it operates. So they're very popular. You know, a lot of people, you know, talk about them. I've had lots of requests to review one or shoot one, and I just, well, eventually I'll get one. I see them around. I just never have done it, and this is especially special to have one like this that was actually brought back, and you know the history of it, and to have not been tinkered with. Let's take a couple more shots with it, see if we have anything else that needs to be shot. Maybe not, but we'll find something. Yes, we will. Let's go into combat mode and shoot a couple of things here. Feels pretty good. And this has much better sights than the P08, that's for sure. That is for sure. So we really appreciate the loan of this wonderful historic firearm. It is cool. I remember seeing these things when I was younger, and just all through my life. I just didn't ever have one, and am glad to be able to put one in my hand and take some shots with it. It's again one of the early 9mm, you know, a military pistol. Was used, carried by police and other people too, but a military pistol, and just very, very recognizable, no doubt about it. What does it have here that I've not pointed out that might be of interest to you? It's a well-built pistol. It's got some heft to it. Of course, it's all steel, the frame, slide, and everything. And you know, it's got all the things that we have come to expect, you know, in terms of your slide lock. You know, the P38 has no slide lock on it either. And it's got the slide lock, you know, the easy breakdown lever. You can carry it in double action mode, just like that, where there's a round in the chamber. Safety off, double action on your first shot, and then it goes to single action. That's something that a lot of people like. You know, they really do. Your SIGs, your Beretta, and other firearms, you know, operate that way. So nothing too unusual about it for an old design, 1938. And like I said, it was kind of ahead of its time. Hey, we're back. John got into a little coughing fit there, so we had cut the video. So while he was in the house getting a glass of water, I seized the moment and reloaded the magazine. All right, so a bad thing turned into a good thing. So I'm gonna take a couple more shots. I was about ready to wrap up the video, but you know what? I've got 8 or 9 more rounds in here. So unless you guys are in a hurry, let's just shoot a couple more rounds before we quit shooting this piece of history. You know, I haven't shot too much long range with it. Let's try those pigs over there. Just mess around a little bit. It went right under. All right. Got one. Got another one. Try Mr. Turkey. That's what Mr. Walther had in mind. Shooting animals at 50, 60, 70 yards when he designed the P38. All right, well, that worked out great. I got a few more shots in. But like I say, this gun was ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and we're still, you know, carrying and shooting and using pistols that have many of these same features. I really like these. Pretty neat, pretty neat. I don't think I had ever fired one before getting my hands on this one. So we certainly appreciate the loan of this firearm. We are supported by a lot of people who lend us firearms to bring to you, and we really do appreciate that. You know, man, these old historical firearms, you know, I have a special place in my heart for these. They're really interesting. So anyway, life is really good.